they keep on talking about is a bonfire of regulations. I say this, the world is a finite resource. The natural world is there for us to work with, not to destroy. It's an attitude of mind that we have to put to it. And if we pump up into the sky, this beautiful sky up above us today, polluted foul air, it goes somewhere, it blows somewhere else, it lands in another country. If people on the beaches of the Netherlands or France or Germany or Denmark throw their waste and their rubbish into the sea, do you know what happens? It ends up on our shores. If we import goods that we know have been made in a completely unsustainable way, that we know have been made in a polluted way, that we know have destroyed the natural environment in the place that they've made, what have we done but export pollution to somewhere else? And so I want to do a number of things. One is to keep, as UK law, all those environmental regulations that were imposed through membership of the European Union. It's good for all of us, and it's the only way we can do things together. But I also want to do much more with trade treaties, be they signed at the moment through the European Union, or any trade treaties we sign in the future. Yes, you want reasonable and fair trade. That's important, it's necessary. But you also want to ensure you're not at the other end of the scale, condoning abuses of human rights or supporting environmental destruction by the goods that we buy or the goods that we outsource for production. There is a level of responsibility for all of us to deal with the issue of human rights abuses around the world and of environmental destruction all around the world. It's a human responsibility we must all have, which is why, whatever the outcome of the negotiations over the European Union, I am not prepared to support the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, because what it would do is import the worst working conditions mainly from the United States. So we would have the bargain basement of economics on one side of the Atlantic being imposed on another, and it would give, through investor protection, the power of global corporations to take national, democratically elected governments to court. You think that sounds extreme? Look at what's happened in Australia, look at what's happened in so many other governments around the world where big business is asserting itself over them. Isn't it time democracy asserted itself in the other way? So it's these attitudes that are so important. Attitudes, justice, attitudes, human rights, and attitudes of democracy. I've been a member of the Labour Party all my life. I've had at times when I've had one or two minor disagreements with some of the things our party has done. But nowhere did I have a bigger disagreement than in 2003 when we were taken to that disastrous war in Iraq. We stood in opposition to that war because we thought the consequences would be dangerous for the entire world, that it would lead to other wars and other conflicts, and that it wasn't because we supported Saddam Hussein and what he was up to. Some of us were very lonely figures in Parliament in the 1980s, opposed to arms sales to Iraq under Saddam Hussein, because we weren't prepared to tolerate the human rights abuses that were happening. But many of those that wanted to go to war ignored all that and said, well, actually, the most important thing is to go to war in Iraq and it'll all be over very, very quickly. Look at what has happened as a result. One war begets another war, begets another war, and we end up with the crises we have all across the region. There has to be a political engagement. There has to be a political solution to issues. There has to be respect for human rights and international law all over the world. Can't we say, as the primary issue of our foreign policy would be support for human rights, democracy and justice and law all around the world, rather than the horrors of what we've done in the Iraq war? And those that say, well, that's all very well, I just say this: there is a humanitarian crisis around the world, the like of which we've never seen before. There are now more displaced people around the whole world than there have ever been at any point in recorded history. Those that are dying in the Mediterranean and the Aegean Sea, those that are dying on other coasts, trying to reach a place of safety, are doing it out of desperation. We have to do two things. Ensure there is a ceasefire in Syria. Ensure there is a political settlement and solution in Syria that respects the diversity of that country. But we also have to have a humanitarian response. You cannot blame, as Nigel Farage and others do, refugees for a war that has forced them into exile, into seeking asylum somewhere else. We have to give that support and reach out to others. And that is what I would want a government to do. And so, these issues are at one level very complex. But they're also about the politics of our society and the politics of our world. The Labour Party was founded more than 100 years ago because the trade union movement, because the working class communities wanted their own independent representation in Parliament. They wanted a party that spoke up and stood up for them. That party was founded with great sacrifice. The achievements, particularly the National Health Service, Social Security legislation, human rights and equality legislation have been incredible and marvellous. But if we don't change the way in which we approach the fundamental economic questions and attitudes towards our society, then we as a party are diminished and damaged. We live now in a Britain with a postcode lottery on healthcare, a postcode lottery on education, a postcode lottery on whether you're likely to get to university or not, and a postcode lottery of how you're going to live your life and how long you will live your life. None of that is right and none of that is necessary. Why can't we instead invest in our young people to provide good quality preschool facilities for all children to grow up, socialise and understand each other together? Can't we end the idea that preschool and post-18 education is somehow a commodity, not a right? And refurbish, rejuvenate, re-strengthen the principle of local education authorities to bring together a family of schools, not the destruction of the education system by academies and free schools and competition between them all. So bringing those together is something that is very important, and valuing all people that work in our education system. You can't run a school without a head teacher any more you can run a school without a cook or a cleaner or an admin staff or a teacher or a teaching assistant. It is a teamwork that there has to be. And then you look to what happens when young people reach the age of 18 and want to do other things in their lives. I want them to have a choice of whether they go to a good quality apprenticeship with a good qualification at the end of it, or they go on to university and achieve something there. But I tell you what, there's two things holding us back. One is poverty, the other is the cost. If somebody is brought up in a poor environment and unable to achieve their potential in school, we are all the poorer for it. We're all the poorer because we don't get the engineer, the nurse, the doctor that could have come from that person. And if we introduce these grotesque levels of fees in universities by lifting the cap, all we're doing is burdening future generations of graduates with debts of 50,000, 60,000, whatever it's going to be. This year, for the first time for many years, the number of working class students going into university is going down, and I suspect will continue to go down. We must reverse that trend and change it by reducing the cost of university education and ending the appalling debts that go with it to people. And recognise that education education is also about education for life as a whole. So many of us have parents or relatives that manage to achieve a great deal by going to adult education, going to night school, going to supplementary education. All the funding for that has been destroyed or cut. Can't we recognise that when we as a community invest in education, we all benefit from it? Let's invest in everybody's education. And recognise that the cultural life of all of us is something that's very important. You have the Crucible Theatre here. We have that incredible tradition of writing, of poetry, of music, of dance. Make sure that is there. Make sure that is there for all of our children, so that all of our children can learn music in school. All of our children can have that opportunity for their own cultural expression. That is surely what is so strong in our society. And so this campaign is, at one level, about the leadership of our party, but it's also about how we do politics within our party. I'm proud of the size of our party, proud of the developments we've achieved. I'm also welcome back all those people that have come back to listen to what we have to say about the alternative we can offer to the people of this country. So that come the general election, there's a pretty clear choice. Do you want a Tory Britain with the inequality, the poverty and the injustice that goes with it? Or do you want a Britain where we have those values of community, those values of the value of everybody else and the contribution that you can make? And you know what? When communities do things together, when communities do things together to protect their school, protect their hospital, open a park, open a theatre, make sure that jobs are protected and defended in a particular factory or enterprise, do things together, you feel very, very strong at the end of it. But if instead you decide to blame him for the lack of school places, blame her for the shortage in the hospital, blame somebody else for the litter in the street or the lack of public transport or anything else. When you get into a blame culture, it's divisive, it's nasty, it creates a very divided and nasty society. And you know what? When you start blaming minorities for the lack of services for the rest of us, it doesn't provide any services and it takes the pressure off those that are underfunding our services in the first place. So come together as communities. Come together as communities. Only half of the young people who were registered to vote in the last general election bothered to take part in the election because too many of them couldn't see the point of it. Can we not, as a party, as a movement, be strong enough to excite and motivate all of those young people to the prospects, the idea of doing things differently? As young people in America, as young people all across Europe are demanding the same thing. End the process of the rolling back of public services. Start instead the process of community investment for the good of all of us. And so I want us to be strong as a movement, as a party, strong in what our principles and what we're trying to do, and at the end of it, quite simply say this to everybody in every part of this country. Our campaign will change politics. It is changing politics already. Our campaign will improve social justice and equality within this country. Our campaign will change the way we look at the world and our status in this world. And our campaign will ensure that no one, no community, and no area of this country is ever forgotten, ignored, or left behind ever again. Thank you very much.